Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. A huge day in D.C. After more than 2 years, we finally have heard from Bob Mueller himself. And we will spend the bulk of the next hour showing you what he said and analyzing it from every angle. Senator Richard Blumenthal, he'll join us. He sits on the all-important Judiciary Committee. We'll also hear from a former federal prosecutor on all of the legal issues that the Mueller presentation today brought up. Then we'll get to the political ramifications. What do Democrats do now? But let's kick things off with some highlights from Mueller. This is, quote, what is propagating the most amount of headlines. I want you to take a listen.
If we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. We did not, however, make a determination as to whether the president did commit a crime.
Mueller also had this to say.
The special counsel's office is part of the Department of Justice, and by regulation, it was bound by that department policy. Charging the president with a crime was therefore not an option we could consider.
Soon after Mueller finished, who else but the president sent out this tweet. Nothing changes from the Mueller report. There was insufficient evidence, and therefore in our country a person is innocent. The case is closed. Thank you. Or so he wishes. It makes you wonder whether he had even heard what Mueller had said. Now bear in mind, Donald Trump is the same guy who said this.
I don't think anybody knows it was Russia that broke into the DNC. She's saying Russia, 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 but maybe it was. I mean, it could be Russia, but it could also be China. It could also be lots of other people. It also could be somebody sitting on their bed that weighs 400 pounds, okay?
This is a good place to remind you that every single intelligence agency this country has, including leaders appointed by this very president, have all confirmed and reaffirmed that Russia did, in fact, interfere with our elections, and they have every intention to do it again. As Mueller closed out his statement today, he made it crystal clear why the probe was both necessary, and also he made a point to give kudos to the people who did the legwork, the same people that the president now wants investigated. Here again, Mr. Mueller.
Now, before I step away, I want to thank the attorneys, the FBI agents, the analysts, the professional staff who helped us conduct this investigation in a fair and independent manner. These individuals, who spent nearly 2 years with the special counsel's office, were of the highest integrity. And I will close by reiterating the central allegation of our indictments, that there were multiple, systematic efforts to interfere in our election. And that allegation deserves the attention of every American. Thank you. Thank you for being here today.
We now bring in Senator Richard Blumenthal. He, the Democrat from Connecticut, and he serves on the Judiciary Committee. Senator, a lot to unpack here, but first, I want to read what I thought was the most substantive note today from Mr. Mueller. He said, quote, if we had confidence the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. Translate, as a former prosecutor, as a former attorney general, as I mentioned, sitting on the Judiciary Committee, what did that mean to you?
Robert Mueller's message to the American people is that Donald Trump would have been charged criminally if he were not a sitting president. In effect, he is saying that the president would be virtually in handcuffs, criminally charged, but for his being president of the United States. And equally important, he was issuing an urgent plea and a warning about the continuing Russian threat to our democracy.
Speak to that point, because he made it not once but twice about the origins of this investigation and the ongoing threat. Yet I know we still sit here almost in June, the year before the next presidential election, and we're still extremely vulnerable. The administration doesn't seem to acknowledge what Mueller even said today. How vulnerable still are we, Senator, for the Russians doing it all over again? We understand they have both the motive and seemingly the intent to do just that.
They have the motive, they have the intent, and they have the means. And so at the very beginning of his statement, He said that the Russians designed and timed their attack to interfere with our elections in 2016 to damage one of the candidates, obviously Hillary Clinton. And then he closed with the same kind of warning that Americans need to pay attention to this threat. And the fact of the matter is, the intelligence community has warned repeatedly, most recently in the last month or so, unanimously, they are of the opinion that the Russians attacked this nation in 2016, which may have been just a dress rehearsal for what's coming in 2020. And we have to have the resolve and the means to counter that continuing threat. Robert Mueller was issuing an urgent plea to the American people: pay attention and act to counter this Russian continuing attack.
In addition to asking the public and obviously the Congress to take that necessary action to protect our next election's integrity, was he also calling on Congress to act as it relates to taking his report, whether it be impeachment proceedings or whatever else? Was he asking Congress to act as well on that front?
His message was somewhat less crystal clear on what Congress should do with this report. Obviously, the report finds that there was no criminally chargeable collusion or conspiracy. There really is no crime of collusion, but for various reasons, he did not charge conspiracy in connection with the Russian interference in our election. But the report states very clearly that the Trump campaign happily accepted, indeed welcomed and encouraged that Russian help. The absence of a charge of criminal conspiracy doesn't mean that Congress can't take action. And likewise on obstruction, his message clearly is that he didn't exonerate the president. If he had found exoneration, as he said, he would have said it. And he emphasized that the long-standing policy of the Department of Justice precludes charging a sitting president with a crime. But he said that the evidence would be preserved along with the documents, the potential testimony, and the underlying evidence may be revealed to the American people in a process that is ongoing right now.
Senator, you were part of the confirmation hearings for our now Attorney General William Barr. When you see what the person who testified before you versus the Attorney General and what he's doing now, literally the chief priority, it seems, for him is to investigate the investigators and in the process declassify protected intelligence seemingly to go after political rivals. Can you convey, I've tried to, maybe not effectively, just how dangerous a road that is and how a misplaced priority, given everything else that's going on, that is?
From the very start, William Barr has acted more as the president's lawyer than as the people's attorney general. He has, in effect, misstated and distorted the report at the very outset in his 4-page summary. In effect, he tried to frame a message that would exonerate the president, even if not in so many terms. And then in the press conference that he did, upon release of the redacted report, he again tried to message it in the president's favor. And most tellingly, he has failed to go to court seeking the release of the grand jury material. It requires a court order. 6E of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure require it, and William Barr has failed to do so. In essence, what I warned of at the time of his confirmation as a member of the Judiciary Committee, unfortunately, has proved to be true. He has been the president's lawyer, not the people's lawyer.
Significantly, I thought yesterday Senator McConnell was asked that if a Supreme Court justice were to pass away next year, would they wait, in effect, to fill the vacancy until after the presidential election, to which he responded,
we'd fill it.
Am I naive to think that after the whole Merrick Garland episode that would have held over with different party control or presidential control? Or were you surprised as well that supposedly the new rule that happened 3 years ago no longer applies?
I wish I could say I was surprised, but the pattern of Leader Mitch McConnell's approach to the federal judiciary has been essentially to fill it with extreme right-wing judges in the image of the Federalist Society and other right-wing groups. That is his mission, from the district court judges to the courts of appeals to the United States Supreme Court. Consistency has never been a constraint for him. He has a political mission in the federal judiciary, and he will follow that mission.
One more point about Bob Mueller, and on the point of coming together. I think he has to come to testify. He has to fully, fairly, and publicly come to Congress. The nation needs and deserves to hear from him. And I thank him for the great work that he and his team have done, but it's not yet done.
Senator Blumenthal, I always appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Now, when we come back, we're going to talk about that last point the senator made with a former federal prosecutor. We'll take a look at all the legal aspects about what Bob Mueller just said and maybe the next steps. Certainly a lot to unpack.